Good morning, happy Friday, everyone. Yes, it is Friday and it is still very, very, very cold outside. But we made it. And, we're actually coming in, well, technically it'd be tomorrow since the year that this happened, but I'll get to that later. Let's get to my low and high act of kindness. Yeah, my low is that it's cold out, no question about that. My high is, if you didn't know it was cold outside, actually looks pretty nice out. The sun is shining. There's some clouds up in the sky. We see some blue sky up there. It's pretty nice. And my act of kindness was, here's the thing. You guys know I call my mom a lot. And last night, I call her before I go to bed, and she told me she was having a bad day, and so me talking to her made her feel better. And so, yeah, that's another high I got, as well as that's my act of kindness. Because come on, you gotta make your mom feel better sometimes. That's just what you do. Okay, so let's talk about hot ones, shall we? Actually, hold on a second. There we go. Now it's a little more center. Oh, I accidentally opened up Google. My bad. Here we go. Okay, so as I pretty much just said, Will Arnett was on Hot Ones. This was a very great episode. Definitely. I like that last week we had Jason Segel, and this week we had Will Arnett. These are actors. Well, they're good actors, obviously, but more importantly, at least from my perspective, these guys were making it big right around the time when I started paying more attention to media and television and movies, and paying attention to what was good and what was bad. These guys were at the forefront of what I should be looking forward to if I hear a good name for who's in a movie, if that makes sense. So yeah, so the last 2 weeks of Hot Ones episodes have kind of been a trip down memory lane for me in a way. Jason Segel, I remember him from Knocked Up. I never saw How I Met Your Mother, but he was in but the scenes I have seen, he would steal the show. And for Will Arnett, as an animation junkie, of course, I've heard his voice in a lot of movies. It's distinct, it's funny, and it's one of those situations where, for Will Arnett, he does impeccable work when he's on camera. If you've seen Arrested Development, you know this. But much like, say, people like Mark Hamill or Regina King, his ability to be a voiceover actor is phenomenal. And it later talked about that in the episode. But before that, obviously, Will Arnett was on Hot Ones promoting Is This Thing On? Co-starring with Laura Dern and being directed by Bradley Cooper. And this is actually a different role that Will Arnett has ever, because obviously Will Arnett is known for comedy, but this is the first time we've ever really seen Will Arnett be in a dramatic role. And according to him, the key to being more dramatic is you have to commit to being vulnerable. Being vulnerable is one of those things where, on paper, it sounds easy, and it definitely comes more natural to some than others. But for the most part, it really can be, again, easier said than done. So this is definitely a nice. So he said it was a nice change for him to do this role. I mean, listen, I said the other day, he's Lego Batman. So yeah, they talked about how he got to be Batman, and he borrowed a little inspiration from Christian Bale's Batman, but he also knew that this was going to be a kids movie and it would be funny, so he kind of cartooned it up a little bit, if that makes sense. Like, I only work in black, and sometimes very, very dark gray. Like, that's funny. Or that one scene in the Lego movie where part of the plan is it's actually Bruce Wayne. It's like, Bruce Wayne? Who's he? Sounds like a really cool guy. You know what I mean? He talked about playing a bad magician on Arrested Development when, like, he was on Arrested Development. They would have, like, magician cheats and stuff. And he's like, listen, this is great, but I'm not trying to be good in this. Like, my character was supposed to be bad at being a magician. That's how it works. He talked about the bad memories he had of auditioning for a pilot, because a lot of pilots he tried out for, never took off the ground. He also talked about meeting Kevin Costner. I mean, yeah, I know Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner's one of those guys where, for all intents and purposes, yeah, he is a great actor, and he's definitely been in more good movies than bad. But I can definitely see why some people tend to make fun of him for just being so one note. I mean, to put things into perspective, when Man of Steel came out, because shout out to Doug and Rob Walker, the Walker Brothers, aka the Nostalgia Critic and Santa Christ. Yes, he's Santa Christ. Anyway, they actually had a bet as to who'd be more wooden, Russell Crowe or Kevin Costner, and Doug Walker won. Technically, Doug Walker won that bet because Kevin Costner was more wooden than Russell Crowe was. But Amy Adams and I think he said Henry Cavill were like worse than both of them, so they called it a draw. Okay, so he talked about being on Canada's Walk of Fame. Full stop, I actually had no idea that Will Arnett was Canadian until this episode. Come to think of it, is Jason Segel Canadian too? Hold on. Yeah! Oh, Santa Monica, California. Oops. My bad. I'm sorry. I totally got that one wrong. I apologize. But that's okay. We learned from this. He talked about the Big Harv from Harvey's, which is like a really good burger or something like that. He talked about working at the Tarragon Theater when he was first trying to get into acting. He talked about how his first major gig was a Manwich commercial. For those of you who are too young to know what Manwich is, it's basically how, that word is synonymous with the Sloppy Joe. I'll be honest, I've never really had a Sloppy Joe. I mean, honestly, as an impressionable kid, you hear Sloppy Joe and you think, that doesn't really sound very appealing. Then again, my first instance of hearing Sloppy Joes was when they announced cafeteria food. When you're in elementary school, and back in the day you weren't supposed to trust cafeteria food because cafeteria food was nasty. So yeah, there's that. He talked about being on Conan O'Brien and how to make a great late night segment. Talked about Wendell Clark being the greatest Toronto Maple Leaf in Toronto Maple Leaf history. And then we get to the bomb, where, this is actually something I know because obviously Will Arnett has been in a lot of sitcoms. Obviously, Arrested Development being no exception. But he talked about his Mount Rushmore sitcoms. He did Cheers, All in the Family, The Office. Partly because I'm pretty sure I think The Office might be because Will Arnett has worked with some of the people in The Office. I'm pretty sure he did at least something with Steve Carell. Yeah, I know he was in Horton Hears a Who with Steve Carell, so there's that. But the instant he has Golden Girls on his Mount Rushmore of sitcoms, I'm like, dude, it's seriously, like, to this very day, I do not think I've ever met anyone who's ever disliked Golden Girls. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there, and I'm sure they have reasons why they don't like that show, but seriously, like, anytime Golden Girls is on, like, I can't help but watch and smile. And I mean, listen, like, B. Arthur, Betty White, Estelle Getty, and Rue McCallum, McCallum, I probably got her name wrong, I'm so sorry. Those 4 women made that show. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that show defined a lot of people's inspirations for comedy. Although I was watching a podcast the other day. It's the one that Tig Notaro, Fortune Feimster, and I'm sorry, her name escapes me. Like, they're on. And one of the reasons why the Golden Girls was so successful is that a lot of the writers were, like, gay guys. Which kind of makes sense. I mean, obviously, again, this is back, like, the mid to late 80s, early 90s, so, people who were associated with the Pride community didn't really get much respect back then. So, I'm glad that we live in better times and we are able to give respect where it's due. So, there's that. Actually, I think I probably said this once before. If I defined it as any of the girls, here's the thing. Like, I'm not naive enough to be Rose. I'm definitely not promiscuous enough to be Blanche. I'm a little too young to be Sophia. So oddly enough, I always associate it with Dorothy. That's just me. With that said, I approve of this Mount Rushmore. Will Arnett has great taste. They talked about how Golden Tea, Gold was the best bar game. Like, you're in a bar and, like, arcade bar games, and Golden Tea was, like, the best game ever. And then for The Last Dab, and this is actually a really neat idea. I said earlier that Will Arnett is known for doing a lot of voices. And for The Last Dab, Sean Evans had to point to a sauce, and Will Arnett had to make what are called effort noises for each sauce that Sean pointed at. If you don't know what effort noises are, like, huh, ooh, like those are effort noises that that you hear. Like, you hear that in, like, animation cartoons. You hear quite a bit of that when people are fighting each other. Again, like, yes, Will Arnett is a celebrity, and yeah, he's done a lot of voiceover work. But shout out to all of the voiceover actors too. I mean, full stop. My dream job is to become a voiceover actor, and they never really do get. Even in today's society, where social media makes the world a little bit smaller and slightly easier to navigate depending on who you are, like, voiceover actors still don't get enough love. And listen, I know there's always going to be the debate of like, oh, he's a celebrity, so I mean, yes. If you don't know, ever since Robin Williams was the voice of the genie in Aladdin, it started a trend where like animated movies could get big names to do characters. Like a couple of years after Aladdin, you had The Lion King. James Earl Jones, rest in peace. Jeremy Irons, Matthew Broderick, Nathan Lane. Those are big name actors at the time that are doing voices for a movie when it really could be well, actually, as long as I'm talking about big names in the movie, Whoopi Goldberg and Cheech Marine, I do need to give a shout out to Jim Cummings though, because he actually is arguably the greatest voiceover actor of all time. He was Ed, and yeah, so yes, in today's society, there are definitely a lot of animated movies using big name actors for voices, but every now and again, a few professional voiceover actors slip through the cracks, and that's really cool. I mean, here's the thing. Sorry to go on a rant about this, but I think I'll just save it for the short. Otherwise, this is a great episode, man. I mean, Will Arnett's awesome. This is a fun episode to watch. It's nice to get a little bit of, inside info in regards to, again, how Will Arnett became, Lego Batman, who I would probably have is easily one of the better Batmans in general. I mean, seriously, we need to put Will Arnett somewhere in the pantheon of great actors who've portrayed Batman to some capacity. He wouldn't be I wouldn't say he's as good as, say, Kevin Costner or Bruce Greenwood, but I got him better than Christian Bale, at least, and Val Kilmer and George Clooney. I think I'll do a top 5. I might make 2 shorts today. I'm getting ahead of myself. I gotta get going. Hope you like this video. Like this, right? YouTube channel, my social media. As always, I'm here on this video for you guys to watch the show for me. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Friday. And remember, if you guys want to talk to me, we're here to lend you always back. Take care and make good choices. 607 all day, baby.